With the anniversary livestream fast approaching, I wanted to take this little bit of time I have left to actually speculate on Hiyuki and Denia's kits. Normally I do this when the characters are first revealed to be coming, but I kinda forgot, so might as well do it now while it's still relevant. So first I want to talk about Hiyuki. Going over the official information we have on Hiyuki, we know that she is a Glacio sword character, and based on how she's being set up in the story as well as the animations revealed by Xbox, Hiyuki is most likely going to be a main DPS character. While having two ults is no longer unique to DPSs thanks to Denia, it's still a strong indicator that the character is going to be a main DPS. And because she is the first character coming out for the anniversary, giving us a new DPS to play with only makes sense. So I'm basically certain that Hiyuki is going to be a main DPS character. But what type of DPS? When it comes to her damage type, I think that it's most likely going to be either heavy attacks or resonance liberation damage. This is because I'm going to be ruling out both echo skill damage and basic attack damage for having main DPSs very recently. And then when it comes to resonance skill damage, Hiyuki needs some way to set herself apart from Carlotta. And I doubt that Kuro Games will suddenly want to give Zhezhi some relevance by creating a new Glacio skill DPS. So her being a skill DPS simply does not seem likely to me. Which leaves us with Liberation and Heavy Attacks. Out of these two, I would definitely prefer a Heavy Attack DPS, because Mortefi being a 4-star would mean Hiyuki automatically has one of her teammates pretty accessible. It was very good for Augusta's revenue. Giving Augusta a strong 4-star teammate definitely did a lot of good things for her revenue, so I can definitely see Kuro Games repeating this. But her being a Liberation DPS is also not too far-fetched in my opinion. It would seem weird to me that Kuro Games suddenly releases a DPS that would benefit from Yuno, especially because Yuno's Blessing of the One Light effect is incredibly tailored towards Augusta. So to me it would make more sense if Kuro made her a Liberation damage dealer, so people would pull for Lene during her current banner. This would cause people to spend their pulls before the anniversary itself, which would leave them with less pulls to pull during the anniversary, which can obviously generate quite a good amount of revenue for Kuro. So her being Liberation is definitely not off the table for me. However, I think a much more interesting conversation is whether she's going to have any additional gimmicks like negative status or not. And my personal prediction is that she will. She is an anniversary DPS, and they seem to be setting her up to be a very interesting character in the main story. And thus making her a bland hypercarry would definitely not be the direction that Kuro wants to go. They want to give her that little bit of extra spice to really convince people to pull for this character. So she's gonna need to have some sort of secondary gimmick, and I think that is going to be Glacio Shave. Kuro Games reworked negative statuses in 2.8, so it seems incredibly natural to me that they would want to introduce every negative status. Havoc Bane and Electro Flare were introduced by Chisa and Bu Ling. And then we got Fusion Burst with Imeth, and we're most likely getting it on Denia, which leaves us with Glacio Shave. With how rare Glacio characters are, this is probably going to be one of the only times we really have a chance to see Glacio Shave in action. And while I'm usually pretty negative to negative statuses, I think Hiyuki has a pretty good chance to pull it off well. This is because Hiyuki is going to be releasing before the negative status support. The main issue that negative status characters face is the fact that without their signature support they really struggle for options, because negative status is something that really is not widespread. But because Hiyuki is coming before the support character, they have to make her strong without that dedicated support, which ultimately forces Kuro Games to give her at least one good alternative. Now whether that be Mortefi or Lene depending on which damage type she's going to be, I don't really mind, as long as she has a good option before the dedicated support comes out. I do think the dedicated support is going to be in version 3.4, and I believe it's going to be Lucilla. Lucilla is the only Lahai Roy character to not be officially revealed yet, and she's also the only one who knows about Hiyuki's existence. Sometimes something that Kuro Games does is pair up characters that have a pairing in the story. For example, Zani and Phoebe got significant screen time, and I believe Imeth and Denia are also going to be teammates, which is incredibly ironic, given that one of them is the Exostrider Resonator, and the other one has some sort of connection to Aleph 1. So Kuro Games does do this, and I think Hiyuki synergizing with Lucilla would make quite a bit of sense. Thankfully, she is not going to be forced into running Chisa, no matter if she is heavy attack or liberation damage. Especially if she's liberation damage, she'll most likely be able to run Lene with Mornia, because Lene and Mornia have incredibly good synergy together. And because we wouldn't have the negative status support yet, the damage of the negative status itself would be less relevant, which would thus decrease the relevance of Chisa's outro skill. But if she is Liberation, I do think it's worth keeping in mind that Lene is also incredibly powerful with the current best tower DPS in the game, which is Imeth, and she's already incredibly flexible as is. So when you pull Hiyuki on release, you might end up having some problems with your team building situation. And this would be fixed by pulling for Lucilla and Chisa. But aside from that, Hiyuki seems to be a relatively safe bet. Now on to Denia. Denia is a fusion rectifier sub-DPS based on the animations we saw. So we can already guess that based on the chromatic foam set, she is going to be the fusion burst sub-DPS to finish the Imeth and Chisa team. During the animation showcase that Xbox posted, she very clearly seemed to have less animations than Hiyuki, which to me suggests a more supportive role as either a full-on support character or a sub-DPS character. I'm leaning towards sub-DPS because after her second liberation, she spawned this prism thing that was able to pulsate. And if she is the fusion burst sub-DPS, I can bet you that prism is going to apply fusion burst. Now there is one other possibility that I think is very interesting, and that is the potential for resonance mode. Resonance mode is a mechanic introduced with Lene, where characters can swap between different team archetypes at the press of a button. Now the reason I didn't mention this for Hiyuki is because DPSs are already pretty covered in their archetypes. I don't believe Hiyuki is going to have a resonance mode, because it's very hard for her to be either Toon Rupture or Toon Strain without stepping on the toes of an already existing character. Imeth and Luke came out in version 3.1, and that's still very recent, which means that we have two Toon Break based DPS characters with only one Toon Break based sub DPS. So I think adding another DPS to the mix would be unfair, and so a sub DPS that was able to interact with these two modes makes a lot more sense to me. And just like what I said about Hiyuki needing some sort of extra flair to hype her up because she's an anniversary character, Denia would naturally need the same thing. Having at least one of the anniversary characters have access to resonance mode just makes sense in my opinion, especially when you consider that there is a main DPS out that is currently in the game who does not have a good support yet. And that is of course Luke. I say this a lot because the way Luke's kit is currently structured makes it impossible for him to really take advantage of his own kit with the current cast of characters. He's not even able to max out his inherent skill currently because he needs 60 Toon Break boosts to do it, but the current maximum is 50 because of the 10 base and the 40 given by Lene. So obviously, he is going to need a support who's able to actually max out this passive. Additionally, Luke does not benefit as much from Lene's outro skill as someone like Imeth, because Luke does absolutely no liberation damage in any point of his rotation. So ultimately, getting a character that has a more synergistic outro skill for Luke just makes sense in my opinion. So eventually we are going to need a second sub DPS who has Toon Break focused abilities. And honestly, I think the irony of Denia working with both the Exostrider Resonator and the #1 Fraxidus hater would be incredibly ironic considering the fact that she apparently can use the power of Aleph 1 and is apparently tied to the Fraxidus. The irony is simply too funny here. But I can also see Lucilla having resonance mode and being good for both Luke and Hiyuki, because Luke and Lucilla do have quite a bit of interaction within the story. So while I'm certain that Denia is going to be the Fusion Burst sub DPS, her being the Luke teammate is definitely a lot more up in the air. So therefore, if you want to get a Luke support, I would definitely wait until we get further confirmation on what Denia actually does, and if she is not the Luke support, then you should probably hope that it's Lucilla. However, for those who want to use Chisa with their Imeth, Denia is definitely going to be crucial to this. But those are just my thoughts on the upcoming characters for version 3.3 and what their kits might be. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. And while you're down there, be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, you should check the Discord link in the description to join my Discord server. But that'll be all from me. Peace.